How would you feel to be thus used? That is how Shakespeare ends the speech of Sir Thomas More, who was Sheriff of London during the May Day Riots of 1517, when a group of white nationalists or xenophobic insurrectionists, much like on our January 6th, broke out in violence to prove their point, which was that instead of blaming the public health crisis and the pandemic of the Black Plague and all that was England was going through during that time, and treating it like a public health crisis that it was, and focusing on hygiene and other disease management practices. Instead, they just said, no, we'll just blame the foreigners because they're here taking our jobs. And this was written about by Shakespeare in his last work that he was able to work on before his death, which was a play that never got published. It was banned by Queen Elizabeth. It was just too much for the time, and she thought it would incite riots of its own, where Shakespeare tries to help these nationalist, xenophobic, racist, seditionists claiming they were patriots to think, like, how would you like it if this happened to you? Which is essentially the legal argument that Sir Thomas More lays out for the rioters. So one of them shouts out, like, they call them strangers, and shouts out, let them be removed from here. Let them leave England. And Sir Thomas More says, okay, let's follow that tape forward and see where that gets us. And he says, grant them removed. And grant that this, your noise, hath cut down all the majesty of England, or in our case, of the Constitution. And you can now imagine that you see these wretched strangers, their babies at their backs, with their poor luggage, plodding toward the ports and coasts for transportation. And you sit as kings in your desires, clothed in the glory of your own rough opinion from yourselves. What have you got? I'll tell you. You've taught how insolence and insurrection should prevail, and how order should be quelled by noise and violence. And by this same pattern, not one of you should live to be an aged man, because other ruffians, younger, quicker, angrier, louder, with the self-same righteousness, self-determination that you have, will then shark on you, and then men, like ravenous fishes, just feed upon one another. It's a wretched existence. You need to stop. Repent. He says, with the same anger that you lift up your hands against order, lift them up for order, and then kneel and ask forgiveness. You'll put down strangers. You'll kill them. And you'll leave the majesty of law behind you and the Constitution just trampled under your feet. But the trampling is just in your mind. Like, eventually you will be caught and brought to trial. And let's say in that moment now you're at trial, you get lucky and the king or the president decides, instead of hanging you for treason, they just decide to banish you. Whither would you go? What country by nature of your evil would give you safe harbor? Do you go to Iraq? Do you go to Germany? Do you go to Mexico? Do you go anywhere but America? Why, then you would be the stranger. And how would you feel to be in a country of such barbarous intent that the people literally break out into violent mobs just to ensure that you have no place among them, but whet their detested knives against your throat, spur you like dogs, and like as if God knows not, nor made not you, nor that the elements were not altogether set to your needs by our God, but rather appropriate and chartered only unto them? How would you feel to be thus used? this is the stranger's case against you. And this is your mountainish inhumanity.